Hey guitar songwriters, Ari Koinuma here, and today I want to talk to you about what makes an iconic riff so that you and I can go about writing our own. So I'm starting to write songs for my new rock band Nekobus. And we agreed as a group that we want to be a big riff rock band, and we want to focus our sound on writing really exciting, hair-raising, fist-pumping kind of big rock and roll riffs that get us excited and hopefully the audience too. And to that end, as we were fishing for the riffs that we want to base our songs on, I started observing, okay, so the kind of riff that I'm looking for should be something that's really exciting on its own. Like when you hear the opening riff, that alone is enough to go, yeah. And some riffs do that and others don't. There are gazillion riffs out there on which rock and roll songs are written on, but obviously not all riffs are made the same. So I picked out some riffs that fit the description of an iconic riff to me and started analyzing, so what are the characteristics that make a riff iconic? And I came up with 6 different characteristics that raise a riff to an iconic status. And I'm going to walk through them with you more or less in the order of must-haves, more important ones, to nice-to-haves that are more extra credit kind. Although, be sure to watch until the end because some of the later ones, although are not must-haves, they will certainly contribute a lot to making a riff memorable. The idea isn't that the riff has to have all 6 characteristics, but the more of them you can incorporate into the riff, the higher the chances that your riff will end up being iconic. Okay, the first characteristic is perhaps the most important one, and it is this: the riff must align with your artistic identity. The riffs, the vibe, the character that you get from the riff should be perfectly matched with who you are as an artist, what you're known for. And that might sound obvious, but it is really worth being conscious of, in that when you first come up with your ideas, right? One of the things that you should think about is, okay, does this sound like us? Does this sound like who we are as a band or who I am as an artist? And if the answer is no, the chance that this riff is going to turn out to be an iconic one is very low, in that for the riff to be iconic, it has to be really authentic to who you are, and hopefully that is part of your artistic identity as well. If you're not fully 100% yourself, if you feel like the riff doesn't align with who you are, if it feels a little bit more experimental, if it feels a little bit more out of character, then it's just not gonna be iconic. You don't want it to be iconic because I don't know that you want to be known for that song as the most well-known song in your catalog, right? The more authentic it is, the more naturally you can sort of associate with that riff, the character of the riff, the stronger it's going to come through to the audience. When I think about, like, for example, an iconic riff that really matches our idea of an artist, I thought of something like Queen's Tie Your Mother Down. See, that riff to me represents what Queen is about. They are just fun and sexy and flamboyant and dramatic and big gestured, and I can imagine Freddie Mercury strutting his stuff on stage just listening to that riff. Okay, here's another one. So that's Alice in Chains, Down That River. Notice how thick and heavy it is, but it's also very melodic and it has a swing to it, right? And then it's actually an unusual meter that again gives nod to how Alice in Chains likes to do things a little bit. That's a twist to Tried and True. That's kind of a little bit of their own flavor kind of thing. And when you listen to that riff, you just kind of go, yeah, that's Alice in Chains. Alright, moving on to actual musical characteristics, I think this first one is perhaps the most important, and that is this. An iconic riff has just the right notes. They're often simple, they're very often concise. When you look at the notes that are in the riff, there is nothing that is just filler, there is nothing that is just taking up space. It has the perfect notes at the perfect moments and nothing more. And while that might sound kind of easy, it is anything but in practice. I record myself writing plenty of riffs, and a lot of times they just don't have the punch. They don't have the economy that's required to make it a bold, simple, memorable statement that is the iconic riff. So in my process, I end up looking at some of the riffs and going, well, it doesn't even bother. Do I even bother working on it because it's just not good enough? And then even when it's getting there, what I end up often doing is removing notes instead of adding notes. See if I can remove all the fluff, just distill it down to the essence, and then sort of bring out the iconic nature of that riff. So for example, here's a really, really simple one. Kurt Cobain was brilliant about how to create concise, catchy riffs that are not complicated at all. It makes my point that that riff doesn't need anything else. It just has the right things at the right place, right notes at the right timing to make it a bold statement. Okay, here's another one I love. So that's Audioslave's Cochise, and I actually played this song with my band, and it is such a great riff. It's simple, it's groovy, it has plenty of attitude, and yeah, it sounds like Tom Morello riff, right? And it is so fun to play, and it gets us so excited when we get to play this song. And it is in the power of that riff and the simplicity of it that makes the riff great. The next characteristic that I want to talk to you about is just as powerful as the first one, but it's sometimes overlooked by bands, and that is this. An iconic riff features a distinct rhythmic pattern. Rhythm is foundational music, more than notes, more than chords, and when the rhythm itself has something distinct to it, it really elevates the memorability or catchiness or the hookiness of that particular part. And Tom Morello is somebody who totally gets this, because listen to this riff. Right? That is Bulls on Parade by Rage Against the Machine. it only has one note. It's just different octave, but essentially it's a riff on F, and only thing that it has going for it is that distinct rhythmic pattern goes ta 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 ta, right? But the rhythm itself is so distinct that if you just listen to that rhythmic pattern, like maybe what's on a pitchless percussion, you almost can hear the riff. It's just so distinct, right? You don't need any other notes. You just focus on some rhythmic pattern that is just distinct, that is unique, and then you're like more than halfway there to creating an iconic riff. Here's another one. This might not be quite as iconic as the other ones, but when it comes on, it always gets me going. It goes like this. I don't know if it's quite as recognizable without the band, but that's Dr. Feelgood by Motley Crue. And even before the main riff of the song kicks in, when the intro riff kicks in, that's like already enough to go, oh yeah, it's rock and roll, right? The rhythm is what makes a riff, and many metal bands just do the daga 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 kind of, you know, 8th note or 16th note thing, and then totally are overlooking the power of distinct rhythm. If I were to teach somebody how to write a riff, I say, you know, don't even start with your instrument or even start with notes. Just think of some distinct rhythm pattern, like whether it goes taka 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 or ta ta taka taka ta taka ta, or something in your head first, and then just use that as a starting point for writing a riff, because getting the distinct rhythm pattern will really get you far in the riff writing business. Okay, this next one actually deals with notes, and it's the same principle that I incorporate into writing melodies or writing hooks, but the same thing can apply to riff writing, and it is this. An iconic riff features a good balance of jumps and stepwise motions. It is not required of a riff to be melodic, but it is great to have jumps in them and not just stepwise motions, because jumps are more attention getting than stepwise motions. Okay, here's a very, very famous riff that is a great example of that. So the end of this is more stepwise kind of thing, right? Well, actually, G to E is a bit of a jump. Right, that's like the stepwise motion, but that's at the tail end of it. The signature sound of that riff is this one. That's the big jump down from G to B flat, at least in a standard tuning guitar, and it's a really big jump, right? There's a stepwise motion there, but then it goes up a big jump. Again, from A to B, E, A to E. It's really easy for guitar players to just stick to stepwise motions. Something like that, right? A lot of times when I hear a riff, and if I don't think it's a particularly strong one, it's missing one of those things. Is either the rhythm is not particularly interesting, or it doesn't have great jumps incorporated into the line. It's mostly stepwise motions. And if you know these principles, then you know to look for them, or you know to incorporate them and then make your riff stronger. It's not super hard once you understand that these are the things that elevate the riff to iconic status. Alright, now we're getting into a little bit more advanced or extra credit kind of area, and while you might not want to think about these things in every riff that you write, if you can incorporate them, it will create a distinct signature for your riff. And that is this. An iconic riff often features bends and slides. For some reason, when you hear the pitch gliding from one to another, it really catches our ears. Lenny Kravitz's "I Gonna Go My Way" is a great example of this. The band makes that riff, right? I'm not like a huge Lenny Kravitz fan, but like when I heard that riff, like the first time I heard it, and it stuck in my head. It's so catchy, and that bend is what makes this riff. Alright, and finally, the last characteristic I want to talk about is the element of surprise or the element of freshness. And this is perhaps the hardest to pull off. Obviously, in rock and roll history, most things have been done before, so looking for something super distinct, super surprising, super fresh, it's a tall order, but it can still be done. So this song might not be quite as well known as the other songs I played, but when I first heard this riff, I was like, whoa. It really left an impression on me. This is King Tuff, Black Moon Spell. So the surprising part, the riff itself would have been quite catchy and iconic by itself, but this note, right? That is a hook. That is the unexpected element in this riff that makes you go, whoa, right? And it shows up throughout the song, and it just really cements the distinctness of that surprise, that unexpectedness in this song. Finally, I want to share with you perhaps one of my very all-time favorite riffs. I think this one is like epitome of an iconic riff, and I think it incorporates just about everything that I talked about. It is "Sleep Now in the Fire" by Rage Against the Machine. It goes something like this. That is just such a rocking riff, and then again this bluesy, this part. That part is it just sounds fresh to me. It's a technique that's been done before many times, but in this context of hard rock or rap metal that they're in, hearing that is just always like, whoa, like it just really catches your ear and makes you remember this riff. So I love that. I think that's one of the greatest riffs of all time. In closing, I'd like to share my humble submission to the catalog of iconic riffs. This is one of my all-time favorite riffs that I've written myself. It's Hurt Cost Machine. It goes like this. So the thing that I love about that riff is I did come up with this chord, which feels like it's something that is uniquely mine. I've never heard that sound before, and then I use also this power chord with 5 at the bottom, which makes it extra gnarly and heavy, even on Strat, and then the move from like more E minor kind of thing at the end to F, which also feels like a surprise too, and there's a rhythmic distinctness, and you get the picture, right? Alright, so today we looked at 6 characteristics that make a riff an iconic one. And with these principles in mind, you can go about finding and writing riffs so that every time you work on a riff, you improve the chances that you create something iconic and memorable. I don't know if I want to call them catchy or hooky, because that's not always the goal for us, but at the same time, I don't know any writers of original music who says, I don't want my music to be memorable, right? Who doesn't want a signature riff, iconic riff that just by playing the riff, people will go, yeah. And these 6 characteristics will help you get there more often than not. That said, writing iconic riff is not easy. It's not something that you can just pick up the guitar and say, yes, today I'm gonna write an iconic riff today. It just doesn't work like that. It's a kind of a scavenger hunt. It's a bit of a discovery process. You go exploring, and then you stumble on a riff, and then you listen to it, and then you tinker with it, and then see if there's something there. And again, I feel like having these kind of a guideposts to kind of judge to see if you can incorporate some of these ideas. Maybe it's already there in the original idea, or if it's not there, you can try to see if the riff can accommodate 1 or 2 of these ideas into the riff, and I think it improves our chances. So let me know in the comments if there are other characteristics that you can think of, or by all means let me know which riffs are iconic to you, and I'd love to take a listen. Alright, that's all I have for you today. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Happy writing.